Word. Okay, it's recording.
All right.
So what is your name?
My name is Naresh Kumra.
Okay. I don't know how to interview people. I'm not as good.
इंटरव्यू करते हो तो एकदम प्रोफेशनल की तरह करो, as if he is not someone you know.
Well, I'm editing this into a video, Mom. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
Oh, that means she should be calling me sir.
No.
Son.
How do
Okay.
I
Mr.
like
Mr.
ask
Kumra.
these questions? Like, how do I casually ask you where you've gone about in your life?
Tell me about this, tell me about that. That's how you frame the question.
Okay. Tell me about where you grew up.
All right. So I grew up in a small town called Rajpura. It's in the province of Punjab, which is where the people with the turbans come from, the Sikhs. It's about 230 kilometers north of New Delhi, which is the capital of India. It's a very small town. It's like tier 3, tier 4. Yeah, that's the place I come from. You have to see on the highest level of zoom on Google Maps to find my town.
And how was your experience growing up in Rajpura?
Well, it was a very happy life. It was a small town. We didn't have internet those days, so the information wasn't there. So we didn't really have high expectations. We didn't have big wants and desires. We used to play, go to school, have lots of friends. It was a safe environment, so it was a very happy childhood.
Was your family always from Rajpura?
So my family originally migrated from Pakistan at the time of independence from England. As you know, at that time, England, when they were leaving in 1947, they divided India into two parts, India and Pakistan. So my part of the family used to be in Pakistan, in an area called Bahawalpur, which is halfway between Lahore and Karachi. And they have a different language there. It's quite different from Punjab culture, as we know. So at the time of independence, to save their lives, my family, my grandparents and their parents, they migrated from Pakistan, and they first entered in a place called Shri Ganganagar, which is at the border of Rajasthan and Punjab in India. And from there, they made their way to Rajpura, where the government of India gave them a small land to build their house. But the interesting part about Rajpura is because most of the people in Rajpura are migrants from the same area, and it was a new town that was developed. So it's actually a very well designed town. Most of the roads in the town are straight lines and perpendicular to each other, which means that uh, land parcels are rectangular in size. And it just seems like an organized town, as opposed to a lot of towns that traditionally have evolved over time. And the city planning, the urban planning has lacked the demand.
Okay. So after living in Rajpura, where did you go from there? I know you made your way to Delhi. How did you go about doing that?
Okay. So when I was growing up, since, as I mentioned, the community in Rajpura had migrated from Pakistan, they basically came to Rajpura with almost nothing. So the families rebuilt their whole life, starting pretty much from scratch. So they tended to be more conservative. And as kids would start growing up, education was not a priority. So the boys typically would drop out of school at some point and start helping in their family business. It could be a shop, like a small kirana store, like a convenience store,
Corner store,
or
yeah.
a corner store, yeah. And the girls would start helping in cooking and other sort of family chores and stuff like that, right? So it was rare for people in that time to actually go to college. And so in my class of, say, about 100 kids in grade 10, I believe less than 10 went to college, right? And so growing up in that place, I was fortunate that my mom was a school teacher, So she was relatively better educated. And my dad was working in the defense services. And he used to travel around the country a lot in his job as a engineer. So he also valued education a lot. So even though I was growing up in this town, and I had all the social influence about, not focusing on studies, playing all the time, and then eventually maybe going into some family business, my dad always emphasized that I had to study more and I had to do a professional degree, either a doctor or an engineer. And if I go to neither of those, then maybe commerce. So that's how the pecking order used to be back then. And when I was in grade, I guess, 9, 10, at that time, my dad started talking to me about going to Chandigarh, which was the state capital, not that far, only like 40 kilometers far, but a world of difference. And I was very fearful of going to a big city, quote
Yeah.
unquote big city, right? I was fearful because I felt that if I went to that college for 11th and 12th, I would have to study in English. And I had studied in Hindi medium school, so I was not very comfortable with that. And so I was resisting that move, and my dad kept talking to me. Then something really fortunate happened, completely lucky. Um, India has a national talent search examination every year, where grade 10 students compete first at the state level and then at the national level. And if you are among, I forget the exact number, if you are among, let's say, some 1,200 kids at the top in this competition in the country, then the government of India gives you scholarship during your college years
Yeah.
for your university education. And it's very prestigious. It helps you a lot throughout your career. And from my school, typically they would send the number one student for this exam. We had a teacher, English teacher, Mr. Vinod Kumar, who was blind. He could see very well. But as a result, his other senses were very strong. And he supported me a lot. He coached me a lot. And he somehow believed that I had a lot more potential than what I was exhibiting in school years at that time because I was playing all the time, not serious about studies. So he actually um, uh, negotiated with our school principal to send two kids to this state level competition that year. The number one student, who was a good friend of mine, still I'm in touch, and me. And even though I was not even number two, I think I was number three or number four, but he insisted that I was sent to this competition. So both of us went to the state level competition. I got selected at the state level. And then that Christmas break, at the state level, they organized a 2 week camp to prepare the kids who were shortlisted in Punjab to prepare them for the national competition, which was to be held in the spring sometime, right? So I went to this competition, to this camp during the winter break, and I got really friendly with about half a dozen kids who had come from Amritsar from a convent school who spoke English like a high-speed train,
Yeah.
were very friendly, and I somehow become very good friends with them. And
That's
during
where
the
you
day
get
we
it
would
from.
that's yeah. So exactly. So during the day, we would do our classes and whatever, and in the evening, these kids would go out sometime to restaurants, sometime to do sightseeing, sometime to see local colleges because they were also ambitious kids who wanted to do engineering and medicine and whatever, right? And hanging out with them. So they would always ask me to come along. So hanging out with them, I became comfortable that there could be kids talk speaking in English, and I can get by and that I have something to offer which these kids value. And so I don't have to feel underconfident, right? And when I came back from that camp, that winter break, I came back and told my dad, I think I'm ready to go to DAV Chandigarh, which was a high school. It used to be called college, actually, DAV
Yeah.
College, where he wanted me to go. So that camp was really transformational for me. Funny enough, so that was December of 1985. So that's almost 40 years ago now. I'm still in touch with some kids from that camp.
Wow.
Yes.
So where did you go from Chandigarh?
So, yeah, your question was on Delhi. So then when I went to Chandigarh, my ambition was I wanted to be an engineer. My dad was an engineer. I wanted to be an engineer. And so the engineering schools that were closer to us, that were highly reputed, were Punjab Engineering College in Chandigarh, That was the #1 engineering school in Punjab, and the Thapar Engineering College in Patiala. And both of these schools were within 40 kilometers of my home.
Yep.
So when I was at DV college, I had to stay in the hostel, the dormitory over there. And the dormitory allocation, the room allocation used to be on your uh, academic performance in grade 10.
Yep.
So kid who had done the best got the best room, the corner room on the top floor, then the next best, and so on and so forth, right? So again, I was very playful. I was not very studious.
Yeah.
And
You had the high
this
score on all the gaming machines.
Exactly right. I got addicted to video gaming where I was a champion, as you know, right? I won many competitions, made a little bit of pocket money. But in my grade 11, very early on, I think people started to notice me that I was very good in math. Like in the classroom, the teacher would give a problem statement and he would write it, the long math problem statement on the board. Halfway through the problem statement, I would guess the rest of the problem statement and I would give the answer. So much so that after some time, while he would be writing the problem statement, the teacher would call out and say, roll number 2500, which was my roll number. He said, roll number 2500 shall not answer. So the people started to notice me. And then there was this friend of mine, I'm still in touch with him. He's in Singapore, Rajiv Gupta. He was a topper in Himachal, which is another neighboring state. And he had the corner room. One day he calls me into his room, shuts the door, and says, Naresh, somebody like you should be preparing for IIT. I'm like, what is IIT? I've heard of ITI, which is like a vocational training school institute, and we have one in Rajpura too, where you can learn to be a welder or a plumber or stuff like that. He said, no, 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 this is IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. And then he told me the whole thing about how it was a super prestigious engineering school. There were only 5 schools all over the country. There's a national exam, joint entrance exam. You have to be in the top 100 in the country to get admission. And then depending on your rank, you get to choose what department, what location, and so on. He said, that's where you need to go. And he also told me how to prepare for it. He said our school system doesn't prepare us very well. So we have to do extra studies. If you only do very well in what they teach at school, you will never qualify. So you have to do extra studies, much tougher math, physics, and chemistry problems. And there are some coaching courses by mail that people typically would join in those days to prepare for the IIT entrance exam. I didn't have enough money. So my roommate at that time, Yuvraj Tandon, who's in London now, and who had, by the way, come from a convent school, so spoke English very well. And he said, Naresh, we should both do this course. I'm preparing for Punjab Engineering College. So you're preparing for IIT, but we should both do it. I also want to do it. How about we both combine our money? We both pay half, but we'll take it in your name because just in case you qualify, then you can get some benefits, etc. So he was so sweet that he offered that. So that's what we did. We did 50-50. The other thing was that because of my 11th grade performance, we got some discount on the price. Right. So that's what we did. And it was called Agarwal classes, Agarwal coaching classes. So I signed up for that. I studied that. So during the day, I used to play video games. Sometime evening, I would watch movies, then come back and I wouldn't focus on my school curriculum. I would focus on this.
You sound just like me.
And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But I did very well. I did very well in my 12th exam, this thing, and joined as IIT entrance exam. Of course, I got a rank better than I expected, but something that I wanted because I wanted to study computer science. And then because I had such a good rank, I could have gone to any department in any of the 5 locations. I chose Delhi because one, it was closer to home. Second, the Delhi campus was within the city, and I wanted a big city experience because I had come from a very, very tiny small town, right? So that's how I ended up going to IIT Delhi. So first, I was fearful of going 40 kilometers, and now I was choosing to go 230 kilometers away for college.
So I have a couple of follow-up questions, but firstly, can you just explain a little bit what IIT Delhi is?
So it's an engineering school. It's ranked, it's the toughest engineering school in India to get into. They were actually all of the IITs combined, right? Yeah. So back when I qualified to join IIT, you had to be in the top 2,000 students in a country of 1.2 billion at that time to get admission to IIT. And to get computer science, you had to be in the top 100 in the country, right? And the infrastructure was top notch for a country like India, even at that time. This is in 1987, right? So the infrastructure was top notch, the quality of faculty was top notch, and your peer group was top notch, right? So it was the place to be. And the cost of education was very, very low. Back then, if I remember correctly, we had to pay 200 and some rupees, which the US dollar exchange rate of that time would be less than 100 US dollar a semester.
Yeah.
200 US dollar a year for tuition, right? And we paid for the dorm, we paid another maybe 40 US dollar, just 1 second. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, where was I?
You're talking about how much you paid for the dorm.
Yeah, so the dorm was, I think it was like less than 1,000 rupees, which was like $50. Sorry, I think I misspoke. The tuition was like some $10-20 a semester.
Wow.
Okay. And the dorm was, let's say, $50 a semester, right? And my additional food and other expenses, and etc. I was given a really generous allowance by my parents, and that was like $40 a semester. $40 a month, sorry. $40 a month. Yeah.
Do you think
And
you would have gotten to where you are today or even to IIT if it wasn't for that friend?
definitely, I'm convinced that I wouldn't have gotten it. I would, well, first of all,
You wouldn't have what? Sorry.
would have not even known about IIT had it not been for my friend. And I mean, at some point, I would have heard of IIT, but it would have been too late.
Yeah.
I was really lucky that in my 11th grade, early enough, in the first semester of 11th grade itself, my friend felt the desire to tell me.
Yeah.
And
also had a
then he
really
also
good
told
teacher.
me how, sorry?
You also had a really good teacher who really pushed for you to get to your college in Chandigarh for all this to happen for you.
Exactly. It was my blind teacher who, pushed, fought for me to go to the NTSC state level exam.
Yeah.
Right? That was a lucky break for me. Then, while I was there, it was a lucky break for me to make friends with Shekhar, who's Shekhar Kapoor, who was the convent-educated kid from Amritsar, who now lives in Silicon Valley Bay Area in California, right? He and his friends, who became good friends with me, Harpreet Singh Gulati, who's another one who's in Los Angeles area, right? So these kids who became friendly with me and gave me the confidence to go to DAV Chandigarh. And then I was lucky again that I had somebody like Rajiv Gupta take notice and tell me early enough, not only about IIT, but also how to prepare for it. Then I was lucky again that I had somebody like Yuvraj who proposed that we take the course in my name and he split the payment with me. So I could get the course. He didn't really need it. He was preparing for Punjab Engineering College. But he said, I want to study it anyway. So I don't know if he really wanted to study or if he was just helping me out, but that's what he did. So I was lucky again and again, all because of the great people who touched my life.
Do you think you're a more generous person because of the generosity these people have shown you?
It's a great question. I guess I have to say that it's probably influenced me because I actually spend a lot of time, when people reach out, I make time to see them. I always respond. I make time available. I give counsel freely. I link them up with other people, with a lot of energy and excitement. And it gives me joy. Uh, I think there's probably a link because people did this for me. Maybe somewhere it influences me that I do the same for others.
Yeah.
It's funny.
So coming back to your education in Delhi, did you always know you want to be an engineer? Like, you had these traditional values growing up, but did you always think that you wanted to be an engineer? That's where you wanted to go with your life? Or is that just like how your circumstances took you? Oh, I think you're muted.
I missed the question because there's a lot of noise outside.
Oh,
sorry.
I was asking, so coming back to your education in Delhi, did you always know that you wanted to be an engineer? Like your parents had these traditional values for you as you were growing up. But is that always like, was that always like something that you wanted to achieve in your life? Like what was the spark behind that goal essentially? Because obviously you've worked very hard to come to where you are. But what really ignited that for you?
Interesting. You ask a difficult question that make me think.
I know.
All right. So I think a couple of things. I mean, understanding yourself is one of the toughest things to do, right? Because we have perceptions of about ourselves, which often are actually colored, right? I think it's probably two things. One is, I had seen my own father, right, who had a joy of traveling, right? And I saw that he was not a degree engineer; he was a diploma engineer, which like you can say is like a technician. So one level, right? Because in his time, because his family had migrated, so he didn't have the fortune of going to like a full degree engineering school because he had to get to a job and earning as soon as possible. So he made choices that he could the best he could, right? So in my case, but I saw he was commercially savvy, he was socially savvy, he used to travel around a lot, very knowledgeable, etc. And that influenced me that, in an engineering career, you get to travel around, you can interact with a lot of people. It's not like you're just sitting on a machine all day long, etc. Right? So I'm sure that influenced me in one way because I picked up my love of traveling, I guess, during our family travels and because of his job. I think the other part was and like for example, his job for a long time was in Chandigarh, and we stayed in a housing community, which was set up by the government company that he used to work for, the ordnance cable factory, right? And you interact with really nice people who are all very well educated. It was a very different environment than the environment in Rajpura, and I really appreciated that environment because people were well read, well educated, smart, you know, exposed to the world and so on, right? So I think that was one part. The second was I realized very early on that I was very good at math. I didn't really have to work hard to do very well in math, right? And that influenced me towards engineering and eventually actually towards computer science because I realized, even without actually ever having seen a computer, I had this intuitive feel that because I'm good in math, I think I'll do well in computers without having to work too hard.
And boy, were you wrong. No, I'm kidding.
You're
So,
funny.
so from Delhi, where did your pathway of life take you from there? Eventually you made your way to the US. Were there any steps before that? Yeah.
Yes. So my 4 years at IIT were essentially, I would say, in three parts. The first part, I was shocked. Being in a big city, living in IITs are fully residential.
Yeah.
You're in a dorm, etc. That's your life, right? So being in a completely independent, right? When I was in Chandigarh in the hostel and dorm, my dad would come up and check up on me every week, etc. And we're all younger, so our degree of freedom was a little bit limited. We were all focused on getting into a good engineering school. So we really didn't venture out that much. But once I got to Delhi, we were already in a uh, top engineering school, right?
Yep.
Just one second. So, we were all adults most of us were adults at this time. I was 17 actually, but most of us were adults by this time, right?
Yep.
And then, so you can go out partying, you start to experiment with drinking, and there's also parties where you will get to meet other people from other colleges, especially living in a boys' hostel, you could meet you'd get to meet girls, etc. All of this was new. So the first part was me just completely fish out of water, like trying to
Yeah.
just understand what is this word, right?
Yeah.
Then you start to hear about people talk about, oh, after engineering, after IIT, I'm going to go to the US for studies. I'm like, is that a thing? Can you do that? I had no idea you could do that, right? So I started I had an information overload,
Yeah.
right? I was just getting exposed to so many new things that I didn't even know existed, right?
Mhm.
So that was the first part. The second part, which lasted roughly about a year, I would say. The second part was me now playing the role as if, yeah, I know, right? So that was the next 2 years, my second and third year, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to live that life as if I've always been that way, right?
Yeah.
And I think I went a bit too much on the partying side, right? My worst academic performance was in my third year, right? I had a, I just realized that in my third year, I had a GPA of 2.5.
Wow, that's where Urva gets it from.
So
Wow, okay.
my cumulative GPA for 4 years was a 3.12. Okay. And but my GPA for the third year was 2.5. And I think my GPA for first year was I'm trying to recall. It was always most of the semesters I did around 3.2, 3.4, 3.5, right? Then 1 year, whole 2 semesters. My third year, first semester, second semester, I was down, and then I recovered, right? Anyway, so I'm at the end of third year, and there's only 1 year left. I've done all of the, I saw IIT years for me as a way of me trying to catch up on the things I didn't learn in school because I had grown up in a very, isolated, sort of disconnected kind of a place, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think I went overboard, right, in the process, and I didn't prioritize other things. I didn't, focus a lot on what I'm going to do after IIT. So once I got to fourth year, once again, a very dear friend of mine, right, sat me down. His name is Rajesh Deva, whom you know. He
Yeah.
sat me down and he said, Kumra, actually, I think it was actually end of third year, not even fourth year. It was end of third year. He sat me down and he said, Kumra, that's how they used to call me. Enough of partying, enough of fun. Only 1 year left, right? You came here with such a high rank, J31 all over the country. You got computer science. Okay, understand where you came from, etc. You did what you did. But now you got to get serious because this year you have to leave IIT on a high. So you have to figure out, are you going to the US for a master's degree in computer science? Are you going to go do an MBA in India? Are you going to take up a job? What are you going to do? You have to figure out and you have to focus on that the next 6, 9, 12 months to make sure you leave on a high again, right? So I got into reflection mode. This is all at the end of third year. And I came to the conclusion I didn't want to study more at that time. I said, I've studied way more than my friends back from Rajpura ever imagined.
Yeah.
I'm at the already 0.1, top 0.1%. Right?
Yeah.
I said, I want to see the world more. Okay. Because I was really, I went from Rajpura to Chandigarh, that's 40 kilometers, then to Delhi, that's 230, 40 kilometers. I said, I want to see the world. So I concluded that a company called Schlumberger that used to recruit on IIT campus every year for overseas global international posting, I felt that was the right job for me. I wanted to be there because they gave you international posting. You made money you had a dollar salary, even though a low dollar salary, but for India, huge, it was a gigantic salary. I said, that's it. It was an oil company and I didn't really care what the company did. I just wanted that job so I could get the experience, right? So it was the number one most coveted job on campus, right? Mm-hmm. And they would only take 2, 3 students, maybe 4 students a year from IIT. So that year, fourth year, first semester, I think the first semester, they came to campus and they first took a written test. Mm-hmm. My whole class of 240 kids applied. Not all of them, most of them, right? Yeah. Then they shortlisted, and somehow my name is not there. Oh. I'm like super sad. I'm like, what the heck? How is it possible? This is written test, and I crack the written test. I always crack exams, right? So how is this possible? So I went to the placement office, and I happened to run into the head of recruiting from Schlumberger, Shakib Sbiti, Egyptian guy based in Dubai with Schlumberger, who was leading the recruiting. He happened to be there. He had not left yet, and I was lucky. I went in. He was there. and there were not many people.
Uh-huh.
I said, sir, I didn't get shortlisted, and by this time my English had become decent. I said, I didn't get shortlisted, and I'm pretty sure I did very, very well in my exam. He said, oh, okay, let me check. He checked. He said, yeah, you did well in exam. I said, then why didn't you not shortlist? He said, you're a computer science guy. You're never going to come join us. You'll get the job, but you'll go to the US. That's what most of the computer science people do. And that's true. In my class of 24 computer science students, 18 went to the US. So he was right. I said, no, I'm different. I'm not even applying. Okay. And that's not what I want to do. I really, really want to work for Schlumberger. He looked me in the eye, and I think he felt that I was being authentic. He said, okay, all right, we'll give you a chance. And he cleared me for the interviews.
Wow.
And then I went to the interviewing process, and they shortlisted, I think, 6 people, I believe, from Delhi, right? And then they gave job offers to two people right away, 2 or 3, I forget now. And the other people, they said, they're putting you on the wait list. As more positions open up, you'll get a job offer. The offer letter could come, before you graduate, or it may come a few months after, up to 6 months after, right? But then they sent us another letter saying that we have an instrumentation business, like electronics and all that, working in a factory, right? They're also looking for some people from India. If you want to move from the waiting list for the oil job to this other process, we can do that, right? My friend Deepak Goyal, whom also he's a senior partner with with BCG in New York. He and I opted to go to that process. We said, yeah, we want to go to instrumentations, right? And then we went through the instrumentation process, and both of us got the job offer. So we ended up in France, living in a city, So we did get an international posting. We didn't get the high salary of the oil business, but we got to live in a city, and we got to work in a factory and learn skills that you can use, that I have used for the rest of my career, actually.
And was this your first time leaving India?
Great question, actually. My first flight in my life was for a final job interview with Schlumberger in France. And I had just finished my final exams for IIT. I was waiting for the convocation to get my degree at the ceremony. During that period, for I think 6 days or so, Deepak, Goyal, and we traveled to France. We flew to Paris, and then we went to Poitiers on a high-speed train. And then we spent a few days in Paris just holidaying, and then we came back. My first flight in my life. Paid by somebody.
Had you already met mom at this point?
Oh, yes. I met your mom. I remember I talked about those parties where the girls' hostel would be invited.
Oh, no, I remember. I just want the interview to know.
Oh, yes. Yes. So we used to have like a social, it was called. It's like an icebreaker with a girls' hostel. Like 60 girls would be invited for the party, and 60 boys would join. And we used to have one such social every semester, 4 years, 8 semesters, 8 socials. This was my 7th social.
So this was during your party boy era in your 3rd year?
No, this was my 4th year, first semester, when I'm not getting serious.
Okay.
Yeah, your mom caught me at the right time. Bouncing back.
All right. So now you are in France. How long were you in France for?
So, Urvashi, you didn't ask one very important question when Daddy was talking about his IIT rank. You didn't ask him what was his IIT rank.
Huh?
I happened to mention along the way that my IIT entrance exam rank was 31 all over the country. So it's called JEE rank 31, Joint Entrance Exam 31. And the funny thing is that even today, right, among friends, people remember each other's rank. And sometimes we joke about it.
That's so crazy. No one remembers who got what GPA, but you remember what rank you were.
Yes. It is such a transformational event.
You have insane luck. You are like straight up the luckiest person I know.
Oh, my biggest luck happened on 6th November 1997, 23 p.m. when I met your mom.
Oh, shut up. I hate how you remember the time.
But that's the truth.
So
Yes, because
you
it
guys
was
were
such a
dating while you
life-changing
were in
thing.
France?
Practice fabric.
So you guys were still dating
So
while you were in France, or were
I
you
was
married?
I was with Schlumberger for
Sorry?
yeah. When I first left for France, we were dating. Um, when I first left from France, so technically, when I first left for France, your mom and I were just friends.
Oh, that's always how it
Just
starts.
yeah, that's how it starts. Yeah, and then um, so the first so my Schlumberger stint was in three parts. First 2 years, I was an engineer in France. During this time, I had a chance to come back to India fairly regularly. Almost every 3 months, I got to come to India, right?
Yeah.
3 4 months, something like that. So that's how whenever I would come to Delhi because we had an office in Delhi, I would spend time in Delhi, and then I was also making good money by this time. So that's how the friendship moved to the next stage, right? And and then the next 2 years, my second stint, I had an opportunity to come back to India to set up a factory for Schlumberger in a joint venture with an Indian company called Crompton Greaves. And that was a 2 year stint, incredible learning experience for me. I got to learn a lot about hiring people, training them, getting them to do work, negotiating with vendors, lots of things on hard skills, soft skills, a lot of things. And during this time, I was posted in Delhi, but I got to travel to France very regularly, every 3 4 months for 2 weeks, right? And then my last stint was back in France as a product manager, again, roughly about a year and a half or so, right? Where this time I was heading a project, a product development project, where I had a team in France and a team in India. So I had my feet in both places, right? So that's sort of how my stint went. So total of 6 years at Schlumberger. First two and the last two, roughly speaking, full time in France. The middle two, full time in India, but frequent visits to France. So I generally say that I spent 6 years in France.
Okay, so by the end of your time in France, at that point, you and mom were married.
That's right. The second stint back to full time in France, we were married, but your mom was doing a law degree in India. So we still are, remote relationships still continued. But luckily, my company was so good, they would pay for her to come visit me once every 3 months, and she would typically come for a month, right? So, and then once every 3 months, because I had a team in India, I would go to India, to Delhi, and then spend a few weeks there. So we actually saw each other a lot, right? She would come over, I would go back, right? And so it just worked out. And we got to see a lot of Europe in the process. It was really good, actually, as a young, newly married couple.
So at the end of your time at Slumber, I don't know how you say it. How old were you, like, at the end of your time in France? Like
I was 27. So at 21, I graduated from IIT. Actually, I was a few weeks short of 21 when I graduated from IIT. I was 27 when I finished, left Schlumberger and moved to the US for my MBA degree at University of Virginia.
Okay. All right. So after your time in Schlumberger, that's when you went to the US. And
Yes.
so your first choice was to go to University of Virginia? So what was your story going to
So, yeah. So, during my Schlumberger career, I was really lucky. I had incredible experiences. At the age of 23, I was heading, I was production manager to set up a new factory, recruit people and so on at the age of 23. So that was incredible leadership and business experience. So I was getting really incredible experiences. And I felt that since my career was growing so fast, I had to upskill myself. So I felt that an MBA would be the right thing. And but the problem was that I felt that an MBA in India would not be appropriate because in India, you typically went for MBA right after undergrad without much work experience or maybe a 1 year. And my work experience was not even a regular work experience. It was really phenomenal work experience, right? I mean, I was doing things that typically people in their 30s or 40s would get to do, right?
Yeah.
So I felt the US was the right place for me. So somehow I narrowed down and I said I wanted to be in a case method business school program, right? There's a handful of schools in those days. There's Harvard, Stanford, Jordan, and maybe, and the other schools were not purely case method. They would do partially case method and a lot of lecture,
What's a case
right?
method school?
Case method is basically, you have the lecture method, right? Which we all know, right? The case method is where, you're given a business case, like a business problem, a company and a business problem and all that. So it's a 10 pages of reading to understand the company and the business problem with some financial data, marketing data, or whatever the case might be, right? You study that, read that, then you analyze and you try to find a solution to that problem.
Yeah.
And then you come to the classroom, and the role of the teacher is actually not to teach, is to actually facilitate a group discussion on that business topic. So
Interesting.
it's more application. It's more application. So whatever books you have, textbooks, you have to read them on your own, right? So the teacher will say, read chapter 5 and then do this case,
Okay.
right?
So
So it's applied. So you do the yeah. So it's really, I felt it worked better for me. Since I was never very studious, at IIT, because it was a lot of lecture-based teaching, actually all of my life before that, right? I was never excited and energized by a classroom, right? I somehow felt intuitively that this would be good for me, right? And that's why I focus on case method program, and then I went for GMAT, etc. And Darden was ranked number 5 that year. It was a lesser known program, but the more I learned about it, I felt that it was phenomenal because it was a small town, so that appealed to me. It was a small school that appealed to me because I wanted to really, I had been going through this personal development journey, starting from Rajpura to Chandigarh to IIT Delhi and so on. I felt that after having worked in France, for 6 years in Schlumberger and so on, I was ready to finally close this personal development journey to a certain milestone. And going to a smaller school, I thought would be a more supporting environment where the other classmates that I would have would be more friendly and supportive and not competitive because it's too big of a school, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I chose Jordan. I had an absolute phenomenal time.
Yeah. So you were in the US then, so you were at UVA for how many years? And then where did you go from there?
So the MBA was 2 years. And, as you think about MBA, it's a really expensive thing to do an MBA degree. It's even more expensive today. Back then also it was super expensive, right? We had to take loans for our graduate education. As you know, your mom also went to the law program, master's in law program at University of Virginia, right? So before even you apply, you think about what are you going to do afterwards, because you will have loans to pay. Somehow, intuitively, I concluded that McKinsey was going to be the right next job for me.
Yep. And
Right.
what's McKinsey?
So McKinsey is what's called a consulting firm, right? Consulting firms are companies that basically give advice. They do advice, give advice to company on whatever topic. Within consulting, there are different kinds of consulting. McKinsey does what's called business consulting or strategy consulting, and they focus on helping or advising the top leaders of a company, like the CEO level people, right? So working at McKinsey, you are interacting with CEOs of large, leading, successful organization. So you get really incredible exposure. You get a lot of good learning. You learn a lot of business tools, right? About how to analyze business problems, how to develop strategy and stuff like that, right? So I felt that in my personal development journey, McKinsey, after MBA, would be the right next stop. And luckily, McKinsey did campus recruiting at Jordan, right?
Yeah.
As luck would have it, I applied for my internship between first year and second year. I made it to the final round of interviews. They used to have 2 or 3 rounds of interviews, lots of case interviews. We'll discuss another time. So I go to Atlanta office of McKinsey for the final round. There are 5 or 6 interviews. I've done well, I think, in 4 of them. The last interview, I don't know what happens. Maybe I get anxious that, okay, I just have one more to go, and after that I'll get an offer, etc. I was feeling very good. I don't know what happened, that I just became really slow in solving that business problem, and I went on the wrong path. I think you stop hearing, you stop listening, because you're thinking so much internally about either the past or the future, right? because you're thinking too much about the past and the future, I was not focusing the moment about the uh, uh, business problem that the interviewer gave me. So I probably missed some information and went the wrong direction. And I really absolutely bombed that interview.
Yep.
That one interview cost me not getting an internship. So think about it. For years now, I've been thinking of going to MBA. I've been thinking of going to McKinsey. Here I am, just about to get an offer, and I bombed. Right? But in hindsight, it worked out really well. I got an offer with a really incredible consulting firm called Booz Allen. Booz Allen gave me a posting in New York. And during the summer internship, they took us on a cruise to the Caribbean. That was your mom and my first cruise vacation, paid by again somebody else, right?
Wow.
And after that, I came back for second year at Darden, and I eventually got the full-time offer at McKinsey to join full-time after MBA. So eventually it all worked out really well.
Wow, you got to work at McKinsey anyway.
Yes, and I got a cruise to Caribbean along the way.
That's amazing. So where did you work with McKinsey? Where in the US were you working there?
So by this time, we found out that we were expecting our first child, right?
Yep.
So your mom had an offer from a New York law firm. I had an offer from McKinsey, right? And we both chose to go to Stamford, Connecticut, which is just outside New York City. Our firm had an office, and McKinsey also had an office. And we felt that we needed more space, and we were going to have a child, and so on. So we went to Stamford, Connecticut. And we stayed in Connecticut for 7 years, 6 years with McKinsey. And both of your brothers were born there, as you know. And then the last year, I moved on to a company called Belden, which is a New York Stock Exchange listed company. And I was head of strategy and M&A as VP of business development. And the plan was, so I left McKinsey and joined Belden on 1st of March, 2006. And the plan was to spend the summer in Connecticut, because summers in Connecticut are awesome. And we had a new home and we really wanted to enjoy it. Yeah. And at the end of the summer, we were going to move to St. Louis, Missouri. But as you know, that didn't happen. Instead,
thank God,
during the summer, I had an opportunity to actually take up a position in Asia as the head of president of the Asia Pacific business. So instead of moving from New York, Connecticut to St. Louis, Missouri, we had the option of moving to Hong Kong, but it became even better because Belden allowed us as a family to stay in Delhi. So as you know, for 5 years, we lived in Delhi, even though my job was in Hong Kong, and we eventually then moved to Hong Kong in 2011.
Okay, so you were in Delhi with Belden for 5 years after McKinsey, at which point you already had 2 kids. And so what happened in your experience in Delhi for the second time now? Or was it the third time? Third time.
Second time after graduating from IIT.
Yeah. So how was your life like in Delhi this time? How did it compare to your previous time from IIT?
So many different, lots of differences. One is externally, as a country. When we came back in 2006, it was September 2006, in our social circle, it seemed that people stopped using the word poor for India. That was shocking because India was still a poor country, but there was so much excitement and upbeat mood about India. There's so much infrastructure development, construction, lots of things going on that, it was just a different word. I mean, everybody was very bullish about the future of India. So that was one. Second, so the quality of housing, quality of lots of things, roads, etc. Everything was improving dramatically at that time, right? Yeah. It has gotten much, much better, even more so in the last 5 years. But back then, already in 2006, the metro in Delhi was being constructed, a lot of construction everywhere. Second was that our own situation was very different, right? First, we were now, not a young couple. I was not single. We had 2 kids, right? And we were at some point hoping we were going to get a third one. We were going to get you at some point. So that was the hope, right? So we were a family with young kids. Second, age-wise, I was in my mid-30s. I was earning very well. I was a senior business leader, of a global company. Um, we had a really, really awesome place to live. We had all of the best amenities, perks available to us. And versus, when I was a student, you know, my pocket money was like $40 a month, right?
Yeah.
And even when I came back to Schlumberger, 93 to 95 to set up the factory, I was earning decent, but it was still, maybe if I remember right, it was I don't remember. Maybe it was let's say $500, $700 a month, right? Maybe $800. I don't remember, but less than 1,000, right? And now it orders of magnitude bigger. We have, and then we are meeting a lot of new people because our kids were going to an international school. We were making friends through the international school. We joined some professional organizations. We made friends through that. So you're really getting more deeply rooted in the community, in various communities within Delhi. And that's why Delhi is such an integral part of our life today.
So
So life was very different this time around.
you your life is very interesting because you've been in India at multiple times throughout your life, at which point, like, your socioeconomic status has changed throughout your life in India. Did you feel that there was like an environmental change, like socially, throughout your life because of your economic change? Yeah.
What do you mean by socially? What environmental change?
So for example, like you mentioned before, they people always thought as of India as a very like poor country. Do you ever feel like that was reflected upon you in your time, maybe even within India, but like primarily in the US or in France? Was that like ever reflected onto you as a person?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I had some really amusing experiences in France, actually. Right. So
Really?
remember when I went to France the first time, it was 91. Okay. India was not known as the IT, technology, software, right? Or a big economy as it's known today. It was nowhere close, right?
Yeah.
India was better known as a country of snake charmers back then,
Oh,
right? Yeah, so Deepak and I used to get a lot of dinner invitations by various people in our small town of Poitiers because they wanted to hear about life in India, right?
yeah.
And because they couldn't imagine, and they used to be amused that here are these two kids who come from India from this top school, and they're in our country making a small salary, and they're learning French and speak French so well and so on. So it was amusing to them, and we were kids, we didn't really care, right? So we were kind of like a showpiece at parties, actually, right? So the other interesting thing was that I mean, people are so naive because again, I mean, like in our country in India, a lot of people have no travel, so they don't have the exposure. The same is true in France and in US as well. So one day we were sitting at lunch, and a friend, one of her colleagues asked, so in India, they don't really have that many cars, etc. There are a lot of elephants, right? People, elephants and horses and whatever. So, when you go to India, right, do you have an elephant? And how do you travel, go from one place to the other? This friend of mine, his name is Rajat Sood. He lives in the US now. Rajat made a joke, right? He said, "Oh, Naresh, because he goes to India so often, so he has an elephant. An elephant is parked at the airport. So when he goes to India, he gets on the elephant and goes home, right?" And then, and then this, simple, innocent colleague, he really believed it. And he said, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." He's really amused. And then he suddenly, after thinking, suddenly he strikes him and he asks a question in a very, very serious face. But wait a second, you're here for 4 months before you go back. So while you're here, who's taking care of your elephant at the airport? So at which point Rajat went on to, make up some another, story, just to have fun. Like, there are people who take care of this, etc. You pay them, and I burst out laughing, right? So yeah. So I mean, there was, definitely. I mean, we are humans, right? So we always have
Yeah.
preconceived notion about other people, right? So people perceived India and Indians in a certain way, right? And there's some good reasons for that, right? And at some time, you can feel being what's the word, discriminated, or racism, etc. I never felt that discrimination or racism was in any way mean or malintended.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I felt it was a lack of
It's
understanding. It was actually
naivety.
in naivete. It was more a weakness on the part of the person than on your part, right? I mean, for
Yeah.
example, both Deepak and I got, with a good fortune, lucky, right? We've done very, very well, relatively speaking, to most of those people, actually,
Yeah.
right? Because we were obviously blessed with a certain skills, work ethic, etc., and so on, right? And of course, opportunities, right, as a rising country, and so on, right? And but at that time when we started, we were at a different place. So our acceleration and our ramp up has been far, far more accelerated and steeper than what's normal in any of those countries, right? So we've surpassed, if you think of economic terms, or whichever way, right? So I don't think it was malintended. It was just naivete. It was innocence. It was lack of exposure, right? So that's my observation, Urvashi.
Okay. So, do you think that like by meeting you, like you changed some of these people's like preconceived notions on India, like they had a better understanding of it? Or was it still like
I believe
quite
so.
naive?
I think, look, your perceptions and your view of the world ultimately is a very personal thing. You and I could be living in the same house, and we could have different perceptions, and that's just how humans are, right?
Yeah.
So there is no one, categorical answer to your question.
Yeah.
But I
Okay, a
believe
better
that
question.
no, but let me answer that
Okay.
still. I believe that people that we interacted with, they all moved in some way. Some moved a lot because they could see. So we have friends, I mean, who could see very early on, especially our peer group, right? Young people. They could see very early on that our skills, our work ethic, our hard work, etc., right? And even our English language skills, right? By this time, my English had become much better, right? So we could interact with people around the world, whereas a lot of French people couldn't, right?
Yeah.
Because they only spoke French, right? They were not very comfortable in English, right? So I think some people could see relatively quickly that, oh, these people are on a different trajectory, right? For some people, usually I would say older or with lesser exposure or less curious and less open-minded people, right? For them it was always like an anomaly. I mean, these people are not like Indian people that we generally think of, but maybe they're a bad example. So I think, and everybody else somewhere between those two extremes.
So do you think the preconceived notions people made about you and your culture changed throughout your life, or was it just like more naivety or more just like the world was learning together?
I think the world has gone through a phenomenal period of globalization,
Mhm.
which started with the World Trade Organization opening up, China becoming a member, global trade, cross-border trade ramping up, etc., starting in the late 80s, right? India as a country itself opened up a lot in 91, right? When India had
Yeah.
a big financial crisis of its own. And with the Y2K that opened up the IT market for India, etc. So I think this globalization wave has really integrated the East and West dramatically. There's been a lot of exchange of people both ways. With that, your exposure levels go up, your preconceived notions get corrected, and so on. So I think all my life I've seen a change in that direction. However, in the last roughly about 10 years or so, right,
Mhm.
there's been a slight dial back from that, where people are becoming hard nosed about perceptions and their view of other groups, whatever those groups might
Yeah.
be, whether it's in religion or region or race or nationality or whatever, right? I think the last 10 years, there's been a dial back from that, right? But up until about, I would say 10 odd years ago, right, I've only seen a one-way train.
Yeah. Okay, so coming now, we've talked a little bit about that. Let's come back to your experiences. Um, So you're in Delhi at this time. So Dad, I actually, before we move on, I actually just really quickly wanted to correct something you said earlier. The luckiest moment of your life was actually September
I know you're right.
28th, 2007 at 4:58 p.m. in Charlotte, North Carolina, when Mom gave birth to me.
That's absolutely correct. That
There
is the
you go.
second most luckiest moment.
So that's the number one luckiest moment of your life.
Yeah, you are funny. I'll give you that. Okay.
Not a joke if
All
it's
right.
true. Okay, so moving on. Uh,
Hmm.
so how long you lived in Delhi, you mentioned for I think 5 years during this period, at which point,
Yes.
as I've mentioned, I was born. Um, what happened there? How did you end up in Hong Kong?
So, as I mentioned, when I moved with Belden to Asia, right, my position was actually in Hong Kong, but Belden let us live as a family in Delhi, and increasingly my travels to Hong Kong increased. My travels to various parts of Asia, especially to China, increased because our business grew a lot. We made some acquisitions, right, and just for convenience sake, it was easier, better to be based in Hong Kong. That is one. Second is by this point, I was also at a stage where I was thinking about the next stage in my career. And my long planned career move, even before joining Belden, actually, while still at McKinsey, was that I was going to do Belden for some time and eventually go into entrepreneurship through buying into a business. So that was my stated career plan, actually, right? And I felt that given my career had been so global, literally with my first job, actually, that it would be a lot better for me to pursue that plan from Hong Kong, which is a more global place with opportunities all across Asia as well as the world, versus being in Delhi, where I would probably get more opportunities in India. And India was at a different stage in a journey where the kind of opportunities I wanted to seek would be fewer. So that was the other reason. So because of those two reasons, we moved to Hong Kong. And after a year in Hong Kong, I eventually left Belton and then pursued my plan to look for a business to buy into or buy out. It took me a year of effort. Finally, I found, as you know, a company. Actually, I had multiple options at that point to close, and I chose to make an investment in Jamatech and take over the management because it seemed like the best opportunities of them all, actually, right? And yeah, so then starting in 2013 April, I was a shareholder, investor, and CEO of Gematech for a period of 8 years, which I left in June 2021. And then I took the next step in my entrepreneur journey, where I'm now investing, helping other entrepreneurs build companies, as well as incubating a few ventures of my own, still out of world's best city, Hong Kong.
So a couple follow-up questions. First, can you expand a little bit on what Gematech is, what type of work they do?
Sure. So when I joined Gematech, at that time, Gematech was essentially a trading company which had uh, uh, license to use the Honeywell brand name, and Honeywell is a global company from the US, and it could use that brand name for some air treatment products like evaporative air cooler, portable air conditioners, dehumidifiers, and also for a lot of electrical accessories like power extension cords, some Bluetooth speakers and stuff like that, right? So, and then it had some other trading, business, an old legacy trading business. So, after taking over as the CEO, within a year we restructured. We narrowed focus into only air treatment products. So, evaporative air cooler, portable air conditioner, dehumidifier, and then we built that business globally in over 70 countries.
Okay, that's really interesting. And you did that all, they did that all under your leadership.
Yes, I was a CEO for 8 years. Great fun 8 years.
Yeah. So you've now lived in Hong Kong for coming up on 13 years. Do you have plans to remain in Hong Kong, or would you like to move back to India or the US at some point?
If there is no other major reason, I would never leave Hong Kong.
Those are some bold
It's
words.
truly the world's best city. After having lived, of course, grown up in India, lived in France, which is an amazingly awesome, beautiful country, great food and all that. Having spent some time in Scotland as well, working, US, of course, traveled in many, many, many countries around the world.
When
I
did you
think
work in
Hong Kong.
Scotland?
Oh, actually, while I was in France, I spent a few months in Scotland during my first stint. It was, I think, the summer of 92. And your mom, who had and by this time we were dating, she had an exchange program at UC Berkeley for the summer semester. And at the end of the summer, she, on her way back from UC Berkeley, California to India, she stopped by Scotland.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know you ever.
Yeah.
I didn't know you lived in Scotland. That's cool.
Well, I thought when in 2019 we went to Scotland and we were showing you, we were doing this family poses, etc. We wanted a picture here, picture there. That was because we were trying to relive our summer of 92.
Dad, we didn't listen to you half the time on that trip.
All right, I should know better.
I was like 9 years old or something. I don't know.
No, you were 12 years old, 2019.
That's basically the same thing. Like between the ages of 9 and 12, you're the same age.
Yeah, I mean, you've not been going that fast. Yeah.
Violating. Okay, Dad. I don't even know how to respond to that.
It's okay. You don't have to just move on.
Okay. So coming back to Hong Kong, obviously you've moved to a lot of different places throughout your life. How much, like, obviously your kids have grown up primarily in Hong Kong. We definitely have the most cultural influence from Hong Kong, maybe the United States. Throughout your life experiences and moving throughout your life, how would you think these different cultures impacted you?
I think, I believe I'm a fundamentally very different person today than I was. The Naresh Kumra, who in December of 84 went to that NTSC camp and met these kids from Amritsar. From then to today, I think I'm a very different person. And not even talking about all the skills and business or different things I've learned. I think just culturally, I think first of all, I'm way more open-minded today. I don't judge to judgments. I don't jump to judgments or conclusions about others quickly, as I probably would have. Even before meeting somebody, I would have biases, right? I don't. I think I listen to people and I try to understand them a lot better. I do understand their story. My favorite questions when I meet people are actually about them and how did they grow up, because that tells you a lot. I always ask, where are you from? They'll say, oh, I'm from Delhi or I'm from... No, no, no. Where were you born? Where were you brought up? And who's in your family? These are my starting questions. I always ask that because it tells me a lot about the person, right? And oftentimes in business, people don't ask that, but I do, right? I think I'm as a result of the experience I've had, coming from a very sort of parochial, male-dominated society, which Northern India tends to be. I think I moved a lot. I hope I'm just the opposite of that today. I think girl power is a thing. So, I think girls are stronger, more powerful, they're smarter. They just spend it too much. But other than that, but yeah. So so I think so when I see, for example, whenever we are back in those environment and people would make statements or make judgments or put expectations on girls, right? From their narrow mind way of looking at things, it actually makes me angry now, which in the old times I wouldn't have even thought about, right?
Yeah.
So I think things like that. Yeah, I think more open-minded and less judgmental.
Yeah.
I would say, sum it up.
Do you think
and
that you
more
had
curious.
like any cultural influence from these places? Like you've lived in France, like you've lived in all these different places and they all have very different cultures. Like, are there any things from those cultures that you still carry with you today?
Lots of things. I think I summed it up as to when I was answering your last question. But if I pick a specific thing, I think from France is the la joie de vivre, right? It's the joy of living, right?
Yeah.
Every day, enjoying your day, right? Whether it's a meal or it's an experience, right?
Yeah.
It's every day. Joie de vivre is so uh, fundamental to how the French live their life. For that matter, I would say, other countries as well. But I mean, in France, there's this term called joie de vivre, right? And food, right? Well presented food. I'm not a foodie, but well presented food with a story, with innovation, creativity, etc.
Yeah.
French food is my favorite. It's one of my favorites, as you know, right? In the US, it's the open dialogue, is the open conversation, right? It's not ignoring the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
right? It's that debating culture, right? Yeah, I mean, the Scotland is the camaraderie, is the friendship, is the loyalty, right? Lots of things, yes. It's sometimes hard to pick up specific things because,
Yeah.
over time, a lot of these things react, and you may have picked up this one thing here, then it reacts with something else, you pick up someplace else, and now you're a blended version of those things, which looks different, right? So, but yes, absolutely, I'm a product of all of these different exposures, experiences. It's all people actually. I think the most fundamental thing in my life has been people around me, how
Mhm.
they have impacted me, whether it was going to DAV for 11th and 12th, or it was to IIT or Schlumberger, whatever, etc. It's always been people impacting. And I think I just picked up this best practice relatively early as a result in my life, that if you hang out with good people, good meaning people who are talented, who are skilled, but also who are nice, who care for others. We hang out with good people, good things happen to you. You just may not know how,
Yeah.
right? I was hanging out with those Amritsar kids in Patiala at that camp. I didn't know how it was going to impact me, but it
Yeah.
impacted. I was hanging out with the certain kids in Chandigarh. It impacted me coming to IIT. I was hanging out with kids in, so if you hang out with good people, you just don't know how it will impact you, but it'll impact you in a good way.
Yeah.
So, and there's a saying in Hindi as well, right? And English in lots of cultures actually. You know, company matters. So be very, very thoughtful and choosy about the company you keep.
Yeah.
It will impact you. You just don't know how.
What's the saying in Hindi?
अच्छी संगत का अच्छा भला.
I understood that. Isn't it? You know what's really funny?
Huh?
I've grown up my entire life in a country that I'm not from, and
Uh-huh.
yet I can hardly speak one or two languages perfectly, and you are trilingual.
I mean, growing up in India, you automatically end up speaking a few languages. I mean, that's just how India is, right?
True, but like I think the difference is that I grew up speaking English and I learned Chinese. We spoke Hindi at home, but you didn't learn English until you were in what, high school?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
so like
my medium of instruction till 10th was Hindi.
yeah, I
It
just
was
think it's really interesting because learning languages definitely gets a lot tougher um as you get older, and you weren't able to pick up just one major language, you were able to pick up two, and you pick them up so well that like at home we primarily communicate in English now, I would say. Um
yeah, and I think English is not that hard. I mean, English is all around us. So if you want to learn English, it's not that hard. Right? The harder thing is to learn other languages nowadays, right? So like French, right? So
yeah,
French, even if you don't practice, you will lose it, right? And I was lucky that I learned French when I was 21, right?
yeah,
And for the first few years, I was living in France.
yeah,
I was living in real France, midway between Paris and Bordeaux. I had no choice but to learn the language. If I want to go get a meal, if I want to go to see the doctor, I want to go to the post office, I have to speak French. So when
yeah,
you immerse yourself in an environment like that, right? you don't have a choice.
And you get to practice French so often. My best friends are French. Arjba's best friend is French.
Exactly right. I mean, you guys are so nice to me. You make sure that I keep my language skills alive.
All right.
You
So
pick friends to help me out.
oh, of course, that's my number one goal in life. So coming on to goals, I want to be mindful of our time. So I have one final question for you. You mentioned you came from very humble beginnings. You did not have a lot of very high expectations for yourself until your teacher really saw that in you. How do you think that your own expectations for yourself and your strive for success changed over time, changed over the course of your career?
I think I will answer that in two ways, right? One is, oftentimes, we look at things, we look at success in terms of what you are taking away from the world.
Mhm.
And one of the easiest metric to track is the money you make.
Yeah.
Right. So when I started at, when I was at IIT, I told you how much I was spending, etc. So a salary of X would be great, and a salary of Y would be superb, etc. So there are numbers, right? And this is what I'm taking from the world. For a while, that metric remains paramount.
Yeah.
Right. I distinctly remember when I was applying to business school, I was looking at what schools to apply, and I knew I would have to take a loan. Right. My number one goal was to get $100,000 job,
Mhm.
which, as an MBA nowadays is nothing, right? In those days, maybe 30-40% of the uh, top business school MBAs would get that salary. So if you were in the top 10-20 business schools in the US, then 30-40% of the students would end up with a $100,000 job. So it was possible, but it was not everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my goal. Then some years later, I mean, that was you look back and say, well, that was such a small number, right? So I think so there are these goals about what you take away from the world. It evolves, and at some point, that stops being the number one thing,
Mhm.
right? Then at some point, and again, everybody is different, or everybody is different. I have friends, for them, how much they take away from the world in terms of money still continues to be the number one goal, aspiration in their life. The number keeps changing, but
Mhm.
it will all right. For others, very early on, it stopped. Pankaj Rai uncle, very early on, he decided, you know, he's of course money is important, but there are other things in life that are important. So he re-engineered his life to optimize around multiple factors, not just one, right? So, but for everybody, at some point or the other priorities, other objectives, other goals in terms of measurement of success start to come in, right?
Yep.
For me, there have been multiple, right? For me, travel somehow has become a big one,
Mhm.
right? Which is still, in some sense, taking away from the word, actually, right? Because it's about me getting this, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but also, so I want to go to 100 countries, right? As you know, right? But then also, building something, right? Sizable, right? Making other people successful, right? Making not only you successful in terms of building something that has a lot of money, etc., but also other people, right? You support them. That's why I invest in companies. That's why I talk to a lot of people. Try to help them because it gives me joy to talk to other people, to support them in their journey, right? And it makes me feel good about that, right? So at some point, I think that also crept in. I think for me, it happened probably right around the time when I came back to India, and I was in a senior position, and then I started getting exposed to the startup entrepreneurial ecosystem, and I would see younger people, and it started giving me joy to interact with them because one, I would learn, but second, I could help them, support them, and it gave me joy.
Yeah. Younger people and much younger people, aka your children.
Yes, Urvari.
All right. I think that's all my questions. You've answered them all.
All right.
I'll end this interview here. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule for this. It was very last
You're most
moment.
welcome.
Thank you.
Most welcome. And could I get a recording?
Yes.
Okay, send me the link. I'll download it.
Okay.